Everyone for joining. It's a pleasure to see some friendly faces and also some new faces in the audience today. So thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. We're going to be touching upon security. So essentially why security needs to be key with your hybrid working model as we move into a more innovative and free flow, I suppose, of working environments. I'm going to jump onto the next slide. As we're all aware, having sat multiple webinars over the past few years, I'm just going to run through a little bit of housekeeping. Please ensure that you're on mute unless you are asking questions or being interactive with the webinar. Please keep yourselves on mute and it just sorts any background noise out, anything like that. We're going to be recording this for distribution. We do have a Q&A function at the end, which may run over. So for those that are being interactive with the webinar and wanting to stay on and maybe ask further questions, that's perfectly fine. And for those that need to jump off, we're going to be recording this webinar and distribute it to the end. And again, if they've got any questions or queries that you want to put to any of the panelists, anyone here at Netpremacy and or at Google, and we run out of time, please do just ping us afterwards, bob it into me or throw it over in an email. And we'll put that to the audience and get back to you as soon as we can. So I think that's it for housekeeping. Do you want to jump on to the next slide? We've got some awesome speakers here today, so I'll pass it over to Dave Ewing to introduce himself, and then we'll go through you guys in order before we kick off.
Oh, hi, I'm Dave Ewing. I'm one of the pre-sales engineers here for Netpremacy. Focused on workspace, so I've got the first part of the session today.
Hi, Ian Brownhill. I'm the Information Security Director at Future. I'm a Netpremacy customer, a Google user, and I'm here to provide the customer perspective.
And the second Ian for the webinar today is, my name's Ian Heritage. I'm a partner engineer and I part of Google Cloud, the security elements. So yeah, look forward to the conversation today. Back to you, Dave.
Just as a quick FYI, we do have two Ians, so we're going to be calling Ian B and Ian H. Otherwise, it's going to get very confusing as we move forward. Now jump on to the next slide. Now I'm well aware for the customers on the call that this is probably something that you can recite off by heart already. But we do have a number of fresh faces on the call today, so I just wanted to delve into a little bit of who we are. It will literally take me about a minute, so please bear with me. For those new ones on the call, this just gives you a little bit of an idea as to who Netpremacy are, what we do, and what our main pillars and focuses are. So today we're going to focus predominantly on the left column, which is the productivity and collaboration. So really the bread and butter of Netpremacy and everything to do with, like you say, collaboration within the organization, from the user to the piece of kit that you use, all the way through to Google Workspace and keeping people productive and collaborating and speaking and things like that. So as I said, this touches on the work transformation, the return to the office and the Chrome side of it that we do here at Netpremacy, but also on the customer success services, which we'll be touching on quite heavily today. In terms of, we've got Freya speaking from CSS, and obviously Ian B, who's heavily involved within the CSS network. So the second pillar we do have is smart analytics. So this is related to GCP, everything to do with infrastructure modernization, data analytics, AI, ML, that sort of arena, but we won't be touching too heavily on that today. A bit towards the why Netpremacy, we've been a Google Premier Partner now since the inception of the program back in 2010. So we've seen the good, bad and the ugly as we've moved and grown with Google. We do have the largest Google Workspace practice in the UK. That's questionable for EMEA as well. So working with some of the most amazing brands, and I won't go through the slides of the brands because you're all here on the call today. So just to say, yeah, we're really proud of our customers and the way that we support our customers through Google Workspace and obviously Chrome and GCP as well. Really want to say it's true value add based on our customer partnerships. But again, they're going to sort of speak for themselves today as the webinar continues. So I won't take up any more of your time. That's a brief intro as to who we are, and I'll pass on to Dave to kick off the webinar.
Okay, yeah, sure. So my section is up first. What does security look like in that hybrid world? And we'll pass over to Ian H around what's coming up. You know, security is an ever-changing feast. And then we've got our panel session and a Q&A. And so I'm, as I said, I'm part of the pre-sales team here at Netpremacy. And security topic is a topic. It's got so many facets. It always comes up in conversation one way or another. There's no silver bullet. There's no one size fits all. And how can there be when we've got even just within Netpremacy, we work with so many different businesses using different tools. One of the approaches I take or have in mind in pre-sales is meeting customers where they are. So today I'm going to cover how we take those first steps, outline some of the key security features that are built into Workspace and the advantage you can take of the high level of integration between them. And certainly we see that when clients take one step forward in one area of security, that tends to bring benefits and an improved security stance in other processes, nudging users along to take a better path and operate securely by default. I'll also do a very quick shout out for the investigation tool and security center, which is one of those hidden gems within Workspace, where basically your admin teams can check every click almost of what a user does and provide good reassurance to your wider organization that security needs are being well met by the platform. Over the next couple of slides, I'll also provide some insight into Netpremacy's own experience with Workspace. As Alex said, it dates back quite a number of years into G Suite and even Google Apps for your domain, as it was called before that. So sometimes you can feel a little bit overwhelmed. There's a ton of regulations, ISO 27001 for information security management, 2717 for cloud security, SOC 2. You're not alone if you're feeling overwhelmed or daunted by it. Google participates in country-specific frameworks as well, such as FedRAMP and our old friend GDPR, which is actually turns 5 next year, unbelievably. But what does all this mean for our world of hybrid work and Workspace? What I want to do is start at the infrastructure level. There's some great foundations that we all benefit from with Google, and we'll work up from there into some of the key security features. They need to be molded to be the right fit for each organization, but we've got a plan of attack through a gap analysis process, and then that links hopefully to some security objectives or priorities that I'm sure a lot of you have in mind today. So a couple of Google Workspace 101s, certainly for the fresh faces on here. There's no scanning of data for ads. I know that's where Google makes a stack of its cash, but that's a key difference with consumer Gmail accounts. The data is also encrypted in transit and at rest. It's also spread across different data centers, different servers within them. And certainly that's part of what Google call their chip to chiller. So right from the processing chips that are in the servers to the aircon systems in those data centers, Google own those designs to make sure that they've got everything covered. Another big piece for Workspace is the spam and phishing prevention that it does. You might not know, Google or Gmail scans over 300 billion attachments each week, blocking harmful content from ever reaching an inbox in the first place. And it does this pretty quietly and efficiently in the background without constantly nagging for virus definition file updates or the like. Google also has, defense in depth. Its infrastructure is pretty resilient, I would say. Many of the security features we benefit from in Workspace were first developed by Google to protect themselves. So they've definitely been tried and tested. And certainly there was a big test this year, which you may be aware of. On June the 1st, there was a targeted denial of service attack, which peaked at 46 million requests per second. It's the largest attack reported to date. And to give a sense of the scale of the attack, that's like receiving all of the daily requests to Wikipedia in just 10 seconds. So, the infrastructure that Google has is pretty good at protecting you. And part of that also is their own, they run their own data network, which there's a view of here. And that's, all geared around minimizing the time that your data spends on the public internet, and getting to a Google point of presence means obviously less opportunity for data observation. We see this as being more important than ever, as connections to Workspace being made by your colleagues are from all sorts of places and all sorts of means. There's home internet, Wi-Fi on the train or in a coffee shop, supplier locations, and definitely also from different countries. Add into that an increasing mix of devices for each person, which can be maybe company owned or bring your own, or long gone are the days of having a BlackBerry just for your email. And I'm an example of this myself. My company owned Chromebook is what I'm presenting from today, but I've got a personal mobile with a work profile on it that lets me access my email and calendar on the go. And that's particularly useful, for me. I don't need to open up the laptop every time I want to check something. But the information that's on my phone can still be wiped remotely if I lose it. The next slide is taking a look at what's inside the Workspace box. I love this slide. Thanks, Freya, for putting it together for me. And it has two great messages. It's really good overview of the breadth of services that come included with Workspace, not just the Gmail front end or slide presentation that we're talking through today. And it shows how the way that those services are linked really supports your users in this hybrid work mode. It gives everyone a consistent experience, even with new features being added. It's responsive and fast. It all just lives in the browser, and people don't get mixed up between installed clients and web versions. There's basically one version for everyone. But we do know that not everyone uses every service in Workspace, and people have chosen a product mix that's right for them. And that brings us on to thinking about what is that right fit for security in this hybrid way of working. And this sort of list that's on the screen here is kind of the things that I get asked to talk about the most to demonstrate when I'm talking about Workspace and the wider Google ecosystem. I would say there's kind of 4 interrelated security things at work here. First is kind of that identity system defense. Cloud ID is a user's unique key to the kingdom. It controls the features visible to a user in Workspace, what functions and apps they can access, and even what files pop up when they do a search on G Drive. The second one is culture change. This is a big one for our Netpremacy clients. We've got our own dedicated change management function to address those people and process aspects of any technology change that lies at the heart of a migration to Workspace, or when we're switching on new features or adapting the platform for a business's specific needs. It definitely manifests itself when there needs to be a strong emphasis on transforming the way that people work, and the availability of shared drives, which provide security for your files beyond the individual user, is one example of this. Another theme is vendor consolidation. We know there's a crucial balance to be struck between multiple attack surfaces and commercial tie-in, but we increasingly see our clients having conversations with us, for example, about removing mail filtering platforms like Mimecast, because Google's already providing such a good level of protection for anti-spam and anti-phishing, as I talked about earlier. And this resonates even more in the hybrid world of working, where your end users just want to switch on the machine and get going without having to wait for antivirus updates and disk scans and all that kind of stuff that just slows down their machines and prevents them from getting on with things. And the security features, that are listed at the bottom half there are sometimes sort of branching out, sort of multi-factor authentication, mobile device management, work profiles I've already mentioned. They're all built into Workspace, and Google, is thinking out of the box a little bit more. Certainly with its own ChromeOS platform and the Titan security keys. Equally, if you've got a lot of Macs and you're using something like JAMF, or you've already got Okta in place for your identity management, then Workspace is going to happily work with those too. And so the themes are definitely flexible to fit your own organization's culture and the current security hardware application stance. So how's the best way about going to use these different security features and make the best steps forward in security for our hybrid world? Well, the admin console is always there. Again, another hidden gem. It's got tips, hints and tips under the health security tab. The admin console allows you to configure who your users are, what they can and can't do, automatically alert for suspicious activity that warrants further investigation. And, just like the lack of ads, which you don't see on Workspace, there aren't any ads. The admin console is quite a departure from that consumer Gmail look and feel that you might be familiar with. And admin console training always forms part of our migration projects. Netpremacy also has a great track record of delivering security workshops for the clients that are in our customer success program. We recommend them annually, a bit like a car MOT, and they give a shopping list of tasks and actions that would bring an individual domain security posture up to our best practice standard. As we said, it's always evolving. There's always new features, and that's why we recommend that it's an annual activity. And that gap analysis can quite often trigger what are our two most popular security campaigns within our CSS team. That's DLP and App Access Control. These are aimed at putting a protective ring around your organization's data and are ways of supporting your end users. What I mean by that, for example, is data loss prevention. Well, it's recently expanded into chat as well as covering Gmail and any files you've got on Drive. And it's kind of there. You can do all the security training in the world, but it's always a moving feast. Not everyone's going to get it right all of the time. So one of the ways to think about DLP is like a set of guardrails to help control the correct sharing of your organization's files. Similarly, under App Access Control, we're looking at third-party apps. Now, they're part of any organization's evolution, and just as new projects come along and need to be protected with DLP, in the same way, then new apps come along and under App Access Control, we're able to put a check on what's being used today and how to manage that on an ongoing basis, rather than having a set-in-stone approach. And so that's, as I've got my 10-minute warning flashing. That's kind of some of the features and approaches that I hope you can see match up with some objectives that you have as an organization to improve security, and one of the reasons you've joined us today. I hope the previous slides give you some confidence. There are many ways to improve your overall security posture with Google Workspace, and the way that Google's infrastructure itself operates, how you're able to deploy multi-factor authentication, remotely monitor activity across your users, or keep control of those apps that your users are sharing data with. Those are just a few examples. If you're considering deploying Workspace as a whole or any of these individual features, Alex will love to hear from you. But as I said at the start, security is an ever-changing feast, and Google itself is not resting on its laurels by any stretch of the imagination. So up next, we've got Ian Heritage from Google, who will give us a great overview on that direction of travel that Google have. And I'm going to stop sharing here. Oh, you've got it.
Straight in.
Yeah, straight in. Thanks, Ian.
No problem. So yeah, thanks, Dave. And I'm going to give you a quick 10-minute overview of where we are really with Google Cloud Security and how we're taking customers and partners on different journeys depending on where they're heading in the cloud, and how they're moving with things like digital transformation. And the thing with digital transformation, we understand that one of the key inhibitors of moving is security, and security transformation really needs to be built into every platform, everything that you're looking to move on to. So if we look at cyber risk today, it's one of, if not the biggest risks on one of those risk registers that the board are always talking about. How could they be impacted by things like ransomware? How could a new service be taken down that they're trying to build? And I think, it says there, managing it effectively is imperative to thrive going forward with this change. If we just go on to the next slide and look at, why now? Why now for security? If we look at the old world with nation state sponsored attacks, the new world is really taking some of the impacts that we've seen from those very highly advanced, well-funded attacks. But in the new world, we're seeing that commercial threat actors are out there, and they are now well-funded, because we know that cybercrime brings financial gain to these organizations and threat actors. If you look at nation states and the level of resources that they required, you took that DDoS attack against a specific piece of infrastructure. The understanding now in the new world, those broad knowledge of TTPs, which are tactics, techniques, and procedures, and you'll see those linked back to things like the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which really understands how threat actors out there are using things like tooling and exploits that are compounded in some of these security in terms of these breaches. If you look at, it used to be just targeting governments and critical national infrastructure for disruption. Now we're seeing in the new world targeting of enterprises of all sizes and sectors. because unfortunately, delivering business and delivering value, if you can inhibit that, then we know that the threat actors can take that, that one part at the bottom here, and that's the financial gain. And if there's business disruption, then unfortunately, the part there is that businesses may or may decide not to pay, but they may decide to pay if they want to move forward. I think in terms of the Google story, in terms of Google Cloud security especially, and how we wrap this into the message, is that Google as an organization keeps more people safer online than anyone else. Dave did touch on it, but currently we're protecting over 5 billion users in our Chrome browser with things like Google Safe Browsing. You probably see this with the sort of red alert where we're analyzing those URLs and websites that are being spun up, and we're trying to prevent those for both commercial and enterprise users. We're enacting 2.5 billion active Gmail users to protect them against phishing, malware. If you look at ransomware, for example, the biggest targeted initial phase of infection is usually a phishing attack, where it will be uniquely targeted against one individual. Things like ransomware as a service are spun up in third-party systems, and then a unique binary or unique URL is sent out to infect that user. Having that ability to quickly enact and gain that threat intelligence and share it with the wider community and wider world is absolutely imperative. One logo that not a lot of people know is this one, is the VirusTotal. Well, they do know the VirusTotal brand specifically, but they don't necessarily know it's part of Google. Google owns one of the biggest threat observatory platforms out there in the world today, which is VirusTotal, that analyzes over 2.4 billion files and URLs on a daily basis, and is some of the underpinning of the threat intelligence to the security tooling that we're seeing out in the market today, as well as our own tools here. In terms of Chronicle security is effectively a look back in time of all of your telemetry, and we analyze petabytes worth of data on a daily basis with our Chronicle and Security Command Center. Security Command Center is your cloud security posture management around your Google Cloud infrastructure specifically, but Chronicle can take in more than just Google. It can take in telemetry from your existing tools today and give you that complete picture of an attack. Won't dwell on this, but this is a really testament to the platform, which is that 46 million requests per second on a specific DDoS attack. And that was prevented with Google's network and our Cloud Armor products protecting that piece of infrastructure. So in terms of what I get asked on a daily basis is, can we use Google technology to protect ourselves? And can we use partners like Netpremacy to help our customers go through that journey? One thing I did want to share just first of all is a story back from 2008. There's a there's a whole series on YouTube at the moment of Hacking Google series. Now I've taken a 1-minute clip, and hopefully with this 1-minute clip you'll get a picture of what happened to us back in 2008 and why we now want to provide security solutions out there to the world to prevent these types of attacks moving forward. So I just have to hit play on my other screen.
December 14th. It was around 4 p.m. Just come out of my last meeting of the day, returned to my desk, and found a hive of energy nearby. Everyone standing around a computer, sort of talking, and they told me that they'd found some very interesting activity.
That interesting activity was the result of one message sent to a Google employee. A casual question with a seemingly innocent link. On any given day, there are over 5 billion links clicked across the internet. But this particular link changed the course of cybersecurity history. It opened a website hosted across the world and started invisibly downloading malicious software onto the Google employee's computer. And just like that, they were in. The attackers used that single entry point to establish a foothold on Google's network.
I was contacted by an incident responder, and they said, hey, we think we have something on one of your Windows machines. So the pull for me into security was one that was kind of cataclysmic, I would say, right? But it really struck me as something that I wanted to be part of.
At the time, security was nowhere near Tim Nguyen's job title. He was responsible for maintaining all the Windows systems running at Google, which explains why he got a call about one of his
Machines.
acting strangely.
Honestly, I was pretty naive. I mean, I thought, okay, one machine was compromised. That sucks, right? My day sucks. But literally by the hour, it got worse. It was a server that was meant for testing. It was tucked away in a corner of a data center. And the attacker had really set up home on that network.
So that is a 1-minute clip, and I'm going to press play again. That's a 1-minute clip from an 11-minute video. There's, I think there's around 8 videos, and it talks about how we do red teaming and how we've, done. It talks about that specific attack, which was Project Aurora, and you can go and do some more Googling of that event. I think the key tenets from our security impact today is we've got 2 tenets of security that we're taking very, very seriously. Detect everything, and if you go back to an attack like that, you need to be able to go backwards in time, because we know the average dwell time of an attack, could be around 166 days at the moment. Some security logging and tooling only takes 30, 60, 90 days worth of logging, and without something that can detect everything, is telemetry based, has rich volume of detection and investigation and hunting, you don't have that capability of building in that full story. The underpinning, I'm not going to specifically dive too much deeper into Chronicle today, but the underpinning of this is our autonomic security operations. This is providing a 10x transformation of security operations today. What I am going to dive a bit deeper into is our Beyond Corp. Beyond Corp is a white paper that was produced back in 2014. At Google, we're around 180,000 employees today. I am treated as an external user to Google until I can prove who I say I am from an identity, make sure my laptop is provisioned in the correct way, is patched, is provisioned with the right applications. And only until then, I'm authorized to the access that I need to do my daily job. The underpinning of Trust Nothing in Google is that Beyond Corp white paper, and this is what we've built around our technology today. But what we've done with that is take that and put that in a product called Beyond Corp Enterprise, which I will touch on shortly. So when we talk about Google's security approach, there are 3 things to take in mind: the Trust Nothing approach, detect everything, and know what Google knows. This is really what we're trying to provide out to the wider community, where if we are in there and we understand a specific breach or an attack, we can share that threat intelligence, share that knowledge with the wider world. So when it comes to the Trust Nothing, and I talked about this specifically going back to the Beyond Corp white paper and how we work at Google today, the 3 tenets of what we're doing with the Zero Trust model is eliminating privileged networks. So, if you're using VPNs today, there will be, a conversation that you will have about that Zero Trust approach. And usually it is to, take down those barriers, take down those castle walls or moat type analogies of how we're doing security today. We want to center the user and device around this to provide, that fine-grained context awareness, and also enforce continuous authorization. So the Trust Nothing should be that if I change network locations, if my laptop posture changes from not having the right definitions or updates from a security perspective, then I want to be continuously monitored from that perspective, but also secured of unintentional consequences that could happen. Now, how we've brought that out to the wider community and customers like yourselves and partners assisting with this delivery is something called Beyond Corp Enterprise. The underpinnings of this, I don't have enough time to go in, this short 10-minute explanation, but it's for any application, any user, any device. The underpinning of this is a technology called Beyond Corp Enterprise that sits over, things like you're doing in your admin consoles today. But the underpinning of this is Chrome Enterprise as a browser for managing both trusted and untrusted users. So if you look on the left here, you've got the extended workforce, you've got your current employees, you've got managed and unmanaged devices. And we saw this, unfortunately, with the pandemic when we didn't have enough time to really pivot. And we were giving, bring your own devices to customers. And and partners out there in the world, but they didn't have a way of necessarily securing them. And this is the key thing, to providing technology that provides visibility, provides the acceptable use policies, provides data loss, malware, and phishing. With no agents, as I said, this is for the Chrome browser specifically. It is not a different version of Chrome browser. It's the latest one that's out there. No proxies. We support any device, any user, and most importantly, anywhere with our user network and backbone. The last 3 or 4 slides I just wanted to touch on, because I do get asked the question quite a lot. Well, what about Chronicle on the detect everything? You know, Chronicle is a game changer for me when it comes to security operations. It provides complete visibility to all of your current tooling, whether that be you're using Google Cloud, or whether you're using other tooling, or even whether you're using other clouds or on-premise technology, giving you access to all of your data in one place. It is a disruptive cost because we allow you to keep most, or if not all, of your data for a compelling user cost. The Chronicle system, you know, I kid you not, you can search it like Google, and you have the power to search at your fingertips. You have the built-in intelligence, and we'll touch on that with the Mandiant acquisitions. You've got automated responses in there from our Simplify acquisition, now called Chronicle SOAR. And, you know, the fundamental, providing Google best practices out of the box. When it comes to knowing what Google knows, I touched on this. VirusTotal is the underpinning of what we're providing out there to the security market, and also our products as well. So VirusTotal, being that world observatory of observing attacks, is very critical to us, and providing that intelligence both from a free point of view and integrated into products and you know, OEM relationships that we have as well. ReCAPTCHA, you know, I'd really like to push this one on, because, you know, you probably see it when you pop up things like you know, detect, you know, these different traffic lights or something on that system within a certain website. The key part here is we are protecting over 5 million sites today, and anti-bot and anti-fraud technology is needed for the latest forms of attacks. It used to be password stuffing, where we would take a list, or the threat actor would take a list of certain passwords and use them against the site, which was known. Now we're seeing things like card stuffing, where you have a set amount of credit cards, and if you don't have a payment site that's been protected, then the threat actors will use those credit cards in quick succession without anti-fraud technology. They will then take the 10 cards that can be used, maybe on, you know, a certain site that doesn't have anti-bot, and then use them for fraudulent activity and the cyber criminal underground. I did just want to throw out one slide here on the Mandiant, and I think we're going to touch on this in the QA session here. There is a lot of information on Google Cloud and the Mandiant acquisition that is now closed. That is all about combining our cloud security portfolio with Mandiant's leading threat intelligence, and that's going to allow us to deliver, you know, enterprises, you know, that full life cycle from attack surface right down to incident response, and with the broadness of the coverage that Mandiant see on the ground. You know, it's really to help that threat intelligence information, you know, be provided to both customers and the wider organizations out there. There are some takeaways. We can probably touch on this in the QA, but there is zero trust assessments that we can do. There's autonomic security operations assessments in terms of maturity. So some of the sort of workshops that Dave spoke about, we can include these. And for something like reCAPTCHA, you can deploy that for free, protect those sites that you're innovating on. And you can go from a free version. If you want to use maybe an iPhone app or an Android app, then there are enterprise versions where you can use things like the SDK and stuff like that as well. So sorry, I probably took a bit more time than I intended there, but I think we're now going over to the QA.
Perfect. Thank you, Ian. That was really, really informative. So I'm going to host the panel. So we're going to fire a couple of questions at both the Ians here. So thank you for joining us today, both of you. And obviously at the end, if anyone else has any further questions, we'll fire over to the audience there. So I guess I'm going to start with you, Ian, from Future, Ian B, and for you to talk a little bit more about sort of what security specific enterprise features Future currently leverage.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm not sure if you're aware of who Future are. Apologies, I've got a bit of a cold, so this is why I'm croaking today, but bear with me. Future traditionally it was a magazine publisher. We've branched out into websites, things like Tech Radar, Tom's Guide, etc. We also do events, we do TV content, and we have price comparison. So everybody loves our adverts for Go Compare. Everybody finds them highly entertaining. Not really. But one thing that Future does is it acquires businesses. And I came in as part of one of these acquisitions about 2.5 years ago. I was very much resolutely a Microsoft person at that point. I hadn't had any real experience of Google or Google Workspace. And Future wasn't particularly mature in terms of its security. So a lot of the things that I was leveraging early on with Workspace was things like setting up two-step verification, which is the 2FA equivalent within Google. Also rolling out single sign-on across all of our core apps so that we could get a little bit more control in terms of SLAM processes. And then one of the biggest things we've been doing in the last sort of year or so is context-aware access. And I know Ian H touched on this in terms of it feeds into the Beyond Core piece, but this is quite simply making sure that you're on a work device if you're accessing our Google Workspace. We've been doing that on the laptops rather than the mobile devices because for a traditionally ungoverned business, people get a little bit tinfoil hat when you start saying you're going to put things onto their personal mobile devices. So we thought we'll do the easy piece first, and then we'll be moving on to that. But I know we're probably going to talk a little bit about the campaigns that Netprem have taken us through in terms of DLP and app access control. But one of the other things that's very good within Google is the sharing controls, because again, it was a bit of a free-for-all before I joined. So I've been locking down the sharing controls and stopping people being able to share anything with anybody and anybody having a link being able to access it. And the other thing that's quite a new innovation, and this is something I see with Google more so than Microsoft, is the pace of innovation and the rollout of new features is far, far quicker. Is a thing called visitor sharing. So this is really my way of killing Dropbox and Box and WeTransfer and all those other lovely ways that the business has got of leaking data unmonitored out of the organization. This is a way I can get sort of far more control and visibility on what's being shared externally.
Perfect, brilliant, Ian. And I guess that led me nicely. Oh, sorry, there might be a lot of background noise. That led me nicely on to, I guess, some of the campaigns that you touched on. So DLP and app access control that you've run with the CSS team, and therefore your CSM. What's been the impact of running those campaigns with Netpremacy?
Well, part of it again is visibility. I mean, app access control for people who aren't sure of that. That's when you get the sign in with Facebook, sign in with Google, sign in with whatever onto a service, and this is when people have used their corporate credentials to sign up to a service using that sign in with Google. And you know, part of it is the kind of slapping yourself on the forehead going, I can't believe somebody signed up to that service using their corporate email, which is quite staggering that people really don't have that level of self-awareness. But the process is very much kind of whitelist everything they're currently on, block it for new services, and then you start working through and filtering out the things that people shouldn't really be using their work credentials to access. But again, it's just making sure we know where the data is flowing out of the organization and the identities are flowing out. In terms of data loss prevention, that's a bit longer term. It's again very useful, but the experience is when you turn it on, you can be quite overwhelmed. So you do have to tune the rules quite high end initially to see where the real big bodies are buried, if that's the term that I can use, and then start to create some kind of more policy decisions initially about how you want to manage some of this data. As I say, we acquire businesses all the time, and there tends to be an approach of just dumping their entire SharePoint, their entire file server into Google Drive, and you can see all sorts of horror stories in there in terms of the data that people have been storing historically. I did find a Word document full of credit cards that had all expired in 1999, which shows how long people hold on to data that they shouldn't be holding on to. But yeah, again, it's a really powerful tool, the DLP functionality that's built in and essentially free within Google. And I know one of the things with Beyond Core is you kind of push that out into the browser level. So you're covering your whole organization with those DLP rules. But as anybody who's embarked on a DLP journey will know, it's not a trivial undertaking.
Definitely not, definitely not. And we've seen that across a couple of our customers as well. They say exactly the same. So thank you for covering off that. So that's given us a bit of an insight as to what Future have been doing around security, both from a CSS perspective with Netpremacy and sort of yourself, Ian, as you joined the business. What's coming next for Future in security space?
I mean, I think everybody's looking at zero trust in one way or another, and you know, as I mentioned, we acquire a lot of businesses. I think it's about 25 in the last 5 years, and the challenges of integrating and bringing them in. That's one of the use cases that I see for zero trust, because you can do that in a far more kind of elegant and swift way to kind of all start collaborating across that, because there tends to be this kind of lag of how long it takes to sort out the ADs and the data centers and the IP range clashes and all of those sort of things when you're trying to fully integrate things. So zero trust gives you a real kind of leg up on that. The thing that really does get me quite excited and is Chronicle, because I've spent a lot of time with security operations, and I think I was working back in the day with SecureWorks, which gave us a full 72 hours worth of history to play with. You know, you're talking about a year's worth of data, Ian, within Chronicle. And all SecureWorks ever told me was which of its devices in my network were not working anymore. And that was all it was, really. That was kind of SIM 1.0. And then you move on to SIM 2.0, which was like the UEBA tools, the Securonics, Exabeams, and all that sort of, and the way Splunk was playing. But again, it started getting really expensive because you start throwing loads of data at those tools, and suddenly your kind of hosting costs go up through the roof, and it starts really kind of, you know, wonderfully, and it ends up being highly expensive and quite unwieldy. And you know, to me, the fact that you can kind of harness Google's search power and Google's kind of infrastructure, and the costing isn't based on the data you're ingesting, so you can literally throw everything at it. It really makes me feel that that's kind of SIM 3.0, and I see it being quite disruptive for a lot of the other people. And there's, you know, I've been to some security events, and there's quite a lot of buzz around Chronicle because of the sort of cost effectiveness of it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm going. So both of the things that you talked about, I'm very interested in for quite different reasons.
Brilliant, thanks, Ian. I'm going to pause on the Future front and move over to Google. So Ian H, we've discussed what's coming next for Future. What about Google? What's coming next for Google security?
Yeah, great question. I think for us, it's combining what we're doing with Google Cloud's existing security portfolio that I've touched on. We've had that exciting acquisition of Mandiant's cyber threat intelligence platforms and things like that. I think that's, you know, going to allow us to deliver our security operations suites to another level as well. You know, even though we're doing, you know, some really great and interesting work today, that's going to help, you know, enterprises, you know, like Future stay protected to every stage of an attack. Ian just mentioned, you know, briefly on, you know, some of the workspace use cases. You know, one of the biggest use cases that I work with Chronicle today is actually more of the insider threat. So, you know, if someone's leaving your organization and they start, you know, sharing documents via Workspace, you know, can you trigger an alert for those specific users who are maybe leaving the business and things like that? So it's actually, you know, the threat modeling, you know, use case is actually, you know, one of the really interesting ones to me. And I think how you do that, you know, you aren't able to do that with 72 hours worth of data. You have to use, you know, the power of what we've got with Google's data processing, you know, our novel analytics processes. I think AI and machine learning is going to become even more central point of what we're doing with automation, because I think we're still on the very early days of what we're doing in security with AI and machine learning, because, you know, a lot of it is rule sets today, and it's not using the broad sets of data that we have and capabilities there. So that's what I'd say for that one. Right.
Brilliant, thanks. That's super interesting. I can see your excitement just as you're talking about it. So I guess more of a thought-provoking question. What security investments should technology leaders be focusing on at the moment, in your opinion?
I think most organizations today, unfortunately, their teams are often lacking sort of the lack of resources and expertise. So I actually see it as a people problem more often than not, is that, you know, we've got all of these great automation tools, but, you know, really in security, especially when I'm speaking to leaders, is that fatigue within security operations is becoming a real thing, alert fatigue especially. So I think, you know, requiring to keep ahead of the attackers, keep ahead of those changing threats, you need platforms out there. So I go back to that white paper about autonomic security operations. Actually, that doesn't talk about any Google product. It just talks about a methodology on how you can do that continuous improvement, continuous development in terms of the security ethos. So it's taking actually from things like SRE and reducing toil and overhead. But you can take that in, you know, early stages of maybe just working with your current tool sets today and moving on. Because you know, as Ian B mentioned, like zero trust, everyone's talking about zero trust, but sometimes it's like where to start. And, you know, even with just gating access to non-secured devices, well, that's a way of forming zero trust that we've been doing anyway. So yeah, I think it's down to that resources and, you know, having a huge partner ecosystem or a partner ecosystem like Netpremacy to really help customers on that journey is really key as well.
Definitely. And I think we heard that from Ian as well, didn't we, around the campaigns? And they're not, you might do one campaign and it tells you exactly how you can go about approaching a certain topic, but that topic isn't done overnight. It can take months and months and months, right? And I guess continuing on sort of the investment wavelength, there are also other areas that businesses can streamline their tech stack, right? So going back to you, Ian B, have you replaced any third-party security solutions in future since adopting sort of future functionality and features in Google Workspace?
On mute. Okay. Yeah, I mean, in a number of ways. I think one of the things that's been touched on before, and I mean, probably said in a far more professional way than I was saying it, but Microsoft's pretty horrible at mail filtering, in my experience. I've not acquired a business that Microsoft hasn't had kind of Mimecast stuck in front of it. And in fact, one of the businesses we bought had Mimecast and then had Darktrace Antigena at the back end of it. And that was pulling out about 8% of the mail that Mimecast had let through was still being filtered out by Darktrace. Because we pulled out Mimecast straight away, we left Darktrace running because it was a running contract on some of the boxes that were currently being protected by it, and that would drop from 8% to less than 0.5%. So really, you get a measure there of the fact that Google's doing a far better job than Microsoft and Mimecast combined were doing. Another area is in terms of IDP, we've had Duo, we've had Okta, we just use Google now, to be honest. That's kind of that gives us what we need. Now, some organizations might find that slightly lightweight, but for us in terms of coverage, it gives us everything we need in terms of that kind of third-party identity provision, the management over the single sign-on on other apps, etc., SAML2 stuff. And I think I've already mentioned Dropbox, getting rid of Dropbox, corporate Dropboxes, all of those sort of things, because you can manage that through Google if you're managing Google properly. And you don't end up with the multiple copies of files with people downloading them out of Drive and then uploading them into Dropbox or one of these other tools and then leaving the version stored on their laptop and all the associated problems you're going to have with that. So I'd say those are the three off the top of my head that would be kind of investment savings.
Cool. Removing Dropbox is music to my ears. I love that. So I guess I'm going to ask one more question to give everyone sort of 10 minutes to be able to ask their questions as well to both Ian's and obviously Netpremacy. So I guess this is for both of you. Just to wrap up, security solutions are constantly evolving, right? And we've talked about that throughout this webinar. What innovation excites you the most for the future of the security space?
Shall I go quickly? Because I've already said it, really. I mean, I work in security, so I spend my time worrying about things rather than getting excited about things. But I do really like Chronicle, and I like the fact that Mandiant's been bought and how that can feed in and enhance and improve the whole kind of threat intelligence piece in Chronicle. So maybe my horizons are limited in that I'm just looking at that, but that to me at the moment is the thing that is going to impact me positively in the next sort of 12 months.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's the shift in the industry to be more proactive and more focused about modernizing, their workflows in what they're doing to security today. So whether that be personnel, underlying technology, I think we need to pioneer to achieve that autonomic process. It's not automated, it's autonomic. It should just be the flow of your oxygenating blood, right? It should just be part of that. But I think without the platforms and capabilities out there, I think security has been sometimes a struggle today. So I'm excited about the more proactive approaches and helping customers deal with what they're good, what they're best at which is delivering their business. They don't have to be security experts, but putting those proactive approaches around is key for us. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, thank you both for joining today and being on our panel. I'm going to hand over, I guess, to the audience now for any questions that you guys might have before we wrap up the webinar.
Stunned everyone into silence.
Yeah, hope so. Like I said, Ian, I'll hand over to yourself.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, I had a question for, I think it was Ian B that mentioned that he was blocking Dropbox and other bits and pieces through Google Workspace, the admin panel. Issues working from home. I had an Amazon delivery just as you were talking about that. what part of the admin panel are you using to do that, and what sort of the functionality behind that?
No, I probably misrepresented that. I'm using the functionality in Google to replace Dropbox.
Okay, right.
Like Cisco Umbrella. Am I allowed to say Cisco on this call? Cisco.
Absolutely not, Ian, but it's okay. I'll let you off.
No, fair enough. I thought I'd missed something because we've been using Google for a little while, and I just wondered if you found sort of a clever way of doing it within the admin panel and through sort of third-party apps or something.
No, sorry.
No problem. Fab. Well, if there's any more questions, I don't think we've got any in the background, so more than happy for you to ping them across, and we can get those resolved for you. But for now, I think we'll give you 6 minutes of your time back and say thank you for joining us. Thanks again to the panelists. Thanks again, both Ian B and Ian H, and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.